I want to talk to you about leadership. What does leadership mean to you?
Theodore Albright is a transformational leader and strategic thinker with over 2 decades of multinational experience across Europe and Africa. A dual qualified legal practitioner, he's built a diverse career spanning legal advisory, corporate strategy, regulatory affairs, and private equity. He has led and supported complex, high-value transactions alongside top-tier global law firms and held leadership roles in organizations such as Vodafone Ghana and Opportunity International, where he engaged with regulators including the Central Bank, NCA, and GIPC. Currently the managing consultant at Family Office Africa, Theodore oversees strategic, legal, and communications consulting for multinational and high-net-worth clients across the continent. Known for his original thinking and elegant problem solving, he brings a multidisciplinary approach to helping leaders navigate complexity with clarity and intent. So Theo, you are a lawyer by profession, you're a management consultant. In fact, I know you to be extremely multifaceted. For those who don't know you, please tell us what you do.
Okay, so professionally I'm a lawyer, but I run a family office. And a family office is a resource to family businesses and business families, high net worth individuals, C-suite executives. And essentially we supply them with strategy, governance, leadership, mindset, and then we tie it with a bow with legal.
Okay. So the business is called the Family Office, and you're literally there to support families, family businesses.
Indeed. It's called the Family Office Africa. And it's a multi-family office, which means that we offer services to all who come to us, and we're agnostic in whom we serve within the parameters that I've just described.
So, I think today I'd like us to spend some time talking strategy, because it's a word that is bandied around. A lot of people don't actually really know what it is. In the business world, we talk about strategy and tactics, or plans and strategy, but strategy is bigger than that. It's not just, for use in the business world. I think it might be good for us to start by just breaking down what is strategy.
Okay, so there's so many definitions, and when you look at some of the seminal works, you get about 13 different types of strategy, but broken at a subatomic level, it is how do I win the game, whatever game I'm playing, sustainably. That's it. So if it's business, how do I win the game of business sustainably? If it's my personal life, how do I win that game sustainably? If it's my professional life, how do I win that sustainably? And then when you disaggregate, how do I win the game? You're looking at the game, what am I playing? And then you're asking what environment within which I play? And then you ask yourself, what team do I use to play? And then who are the competition? So in a nutshell, how do I win the game and win it sustainably? Not at all costs, but sustainably. That would be strategy. We'll unpackage the component parts of strategy.
Beautiful. I think I'd like us to just dive straight in. So how do I win the game? And you talked about professionally for, at one facet, personally, as a business. Maybe do you want to take one of them and let's, kind of try to unpack it?
I think that you can have an identikit strategy, which applies to almost every given circumstance in life. So I would say that your starting point should be, what is my purpose, or what is my why? If it is business, what is the why for the business? If it's personal life, what is the why for my life? If it's my professional life, what is the why? Then beyond that, you ask yourself, what are the objectives of the why? And for that, I like to give quantifiable figures so that you can measure them in a smarter way afterwards. So if my objective is to become Africa's leading family office, then I need to give figures and facts, quantifiable figures and facts. So we will serve 100,000 families on the continent of Africa. We will be number one. our turnover will be XYZ, etc., etc. So that is measurable. Then the strategy bit, which comes after the purpose and the objectives, is to look at what's the vision for the why. And in fact, the strategy is the what. So you've come from a why, the purpose. The objective is the, I beg your pardon, the objective is the what, and then the strategy is the how. All right. So what's the vision? What vision do I have for coming out of this purpose? What are the values? And the values are really critical to your success. And I'll tell you why in a moment. And then what's the value proposition I'm offering, whether it's professionally, personally, or business, or charity. So for business, you can read charity also. And then you ask yourself, what culture do I want to create? And the reason I talk about culture is because we know that culture will eat your strategy for breakfast if you don't have it right. So culture
like
is
you
the
said,
way
strategy is the how.
Yeah.
So culture fits
the culture
directly into
are the nuances. And culture, when you disaggregate it, what you get are the values. So if you want to change culture, you look at values. So culture is an amalgam of your values. And that's critical because those values are the belief systems which drive the mindset for the implementation of whatever it is that you want to do. So you've come from your vision, you've got your value system, you've got your value proposition, what I'm offering, and why people would buy my product or service. Then you come to assumptions. Now, the assumptions, quite often, we come into business or any relationship for that matter with preconceived notions. And those need to give in oxygen and give in air. And so you need to put them on the table and say, these are the assumptions upon which I am going in or traveling in this direction. And then you also ask yourself, so what needs to be right in the given environment for these assumptions to succeed? So not only are you saying we are airing the assumptions, but we are also saying these are the conditions which need to be in place for the assumptions to succeed. And that Oxford University calls them the ghost strategies. And so if you don't air those assumptions, you're going to run off ahead of yourself and have to come back and say, we made these assumptions and so on and so forth. So your culture is important, the assumptions are important, and then from there you ask yourself, so what is the mission that is driving all of this? And quite often the mission is not much different from the purpose.
Right.
And then what is the business model? And so here we're talking strictly business. What is the model we want to operate? And that's important. Again, you give it air. Then, you know, your 4 Ps. So you do your people, your plans, your processes, your policies. All of those things are important. And then, lastly, you look at some S's. The first S is, how do we measure what we're doing? So you have a scorecard. That needs to be clear. And again, when you break up the scorecard, normally it'll be finance, customer satisfaction, your people satisfaction, and operational efficiency.
Different performance indicators.
Indicators which go into a metric, which go into your dashboard. Beyond that, you create some scenarios. Really, really important. So I normally advise to create 3 scenarios.
Right.
And those are, in a way, driven by the assumptions. The first assumption is a financial transactional scenario. If our cash flow forecast is on point, then we're good. If it's not, what do we do? Typically, when we craft scenarios, we focus on transactional, the money bit. But you should also consider conceptual scenarios, i.e., where's the disruption going to come from? Okay, we don't ask that, we should. And the last is the contextual scenarios, which is your classic pestle analysis, political, economic, social, technological, legal, and environmental. All of those are really, really important.
Yeah.
So that really, we're still looking at your S, which is your strategy. You've come from your purpose, your objectives, your strategy. Now let's deploy. So we're looking at tactics, which are the strategic initiatives that you're going to, minor actions, activities that you're going to engage in order to bring it to fruition.
To bring your strategy to
fruition.
Life. Yeah.
Okay. So that's part one. You've got it all set out. Then you ask yourself, what capabilities do we need in terms of resource, time, finance or treasure, talent, and traction? And those are critical. And so we need to be intentional and very clear about those in order to be able to administer all that we've just said. And then your structure. Is it going to be flat, hierarchical? And then your systems, HR systems, financial systems, logistics, and so on.
And I think this is a beautifully, described process.
Yes.
I think those who maybe didn't know what it was, I think
Yes.
you've given a very, very good idea. And I think I'd like us to do two things. One is maybe take it to the most basic level. Let's give an example of strategy to improve your family life, so we can bring it to life for those who may still be, grappling with some of the
Super.
definitions and
we talk about strategy, but there are two things that come before the strategy. And I see you have a book by John C. Maxwell. He talks about everything rises and falls on leadership. And I agree with him halfway. Everything rises and falls on leadership, but leadership rises and falls on mindset.
Right.
Okay. So I'm going to take you straight back to leadership. And my definition of leadership is simply a cognitive orientation and a process where you seek to influence, inform, and inspire yourself and then others to think and do and be better for positive impact and positive outcomes. So
Beautiful.
Right at the beginning, whatever is family, business, or charity, you would need somebody who stand up and say, this is the direction we want to go. I've got the vision. All right?
So, for example, this family, we don't spend enough time together.
Yeah.
We think, our vision is we become close-knit. We enjoy each other's company. We do things together, even if we have separate lives. Let's say that's the vision. So how should we work towards
that's
building
the vision.
it?
That's the vision. And what will drive it will always be the values. And so we need to come to a place where we all agree that love, laughter, community, stewardship, those are critical drivers. And once we have those values clearly carved out, that then becomes the culture of the family. That then, on that basis, you are able to inform, you are able to inspire, because you've got the vision, and you are able to influence. Influence is primarily values-based. Inspiration is primarily vision-based. And then information is primarily knowledge-based. So you see that the golden thread of vision and knowledge and values, they still run through.
So go back to values.
Yeah.
So where you have, you're working on a strategy that doesn't involve yourself. So going back to this family, or it's the same in a business context. You have different people coming together. So how do you define values that are central to all of you or that mean the same? Okay. Would it be the leader bringing his or her own values and asking people to adopt them? Do you shape them together? If it's something that you're starting from scratch, it might be easier. If it's an organization or a system that's already entrenched, and it's been through challenges.
Yeah.
So again, if we take it back to the family where you have, let's say, a large family, a mother, a father, 6 children,
Yeah.
And you're trying to define what those values are, would it be from the mum or the dad, or is it something that you bring your mutual values and then you carve something? This is just, I'm just trying to give people a little...
So a vision is a picture of the future, okay? So if you take a country, right, and we want to be a first world country, that's a brilliant vision, okay? And so then you ask, what are the values which, when they're culminated, will give us a culture which will allow us to arrive at being a first world country? If we don't know, we can simply shift our gaze to another first world country, okay? And one first world country, they work hard, they only take 2 weeks holidays. Another first world country, they're really cool. So the Nordic countries, you know, they're more into social well-being. And then maybe you look at another Far Eastern country, they're driven by a certain culture, okay? And then you say, which one is proximate to us? All countries, all communities, all families will have a culture and of some sort, i.e. the way we do things around here. That's culture. Will that culture, and for that matter, the aggregated values, get us to the dream? If not, then we need to go back to the drawing board and rethink and rescope the nature of the values. And so our thinking plus our doing plus our being is what is going to get us the positive impact and the positive outcomes. And so if we look at the outcomes and they're not positive or they're suboptimal, then very quickly as a flash you go back to the thinking and you say, so what are the values? What are the values? The value system becomes the metric, the rubric by which everything is filtered. And so once we agree on the value system, and you know, if I may take you to the good book, the Bible, it's quite interesting when you look at the 10 Commandments. 8 of them are thou shalt nots, only 2 of them are thou shalt. It means that sometimes subtracting is more than adding. So what is it that we are doing which is drawing us back? Perhaps we ought to start by stopping rather than starting. So for every one thou shalt, you have 4 thou shalt nots. Very interesting ratio. And you can apply it in strategy and say, guys, what is it that we are doing? We must be doing something wrong. Okay, so let's subtract. And the reason you subtract is because you're quite aware of what it is that you're doing. You might not be aware of how to get there, but you might be aware of how not to get there. So very quickly, we start to take things out. So if we're a family that never rings each other, maybe we should start ringing each other. If we're a family that never gets together, maybe we should start getting together. I use my own family, for example. Every first Sunday of the month, my mother and I, and if my sister's around or my brother's around, we go out. We go out of town, prum, or wherever.
Just get together somewhere, go away.
And it's become a family tradition. The value system being we like to link and keep together. So first, the values. Maybe the thou shalt not will help shape what we do not do. Then we start to look at what we can do.
Well, you've explained values and the link to culture beautifully.
Yeah.
It's so you cannot really subtract them because your culture is your values, and
Yes.
vice versa. So recognizing what that looks like. So even if you can't pinpoint what your values are, when you look at your culture, you'll be able to derive what values stem from there.
Indeed.
And then see, based on where you want to go, that strategic vision that you have, how you're going to
Let me
work
give
towards building
a classic example. We're not too far away from a certain barracks, right? When you walk 20 minutes or 30 minutes from either the north or the south and you get to that barracks, suddenly the behavior changes. Totally.
We're talking military barracks.
It's a military barracks. Yeah. So suddenly, because of the culture, the systems and structures in that military barracks, everybody drives in a particular way, everybody walks in a particular way, and you stop when you're asked to stop.
Yeah.
It means that in that enclave, you have a macrocosm of a culture, and that culture seems to work for that particular environment. The moment you come out, it's a different
It's a different world almost.
completely different world. Completely different world. I use
Different
another
cultures, different,
I use another example. You know, on a Friday night, 11 o'clock, you jump on a flight. You get to Heathrow. You have 650 people on the plane. You get to Heathrow, and suddenly, almost miraculously, after 6 hours on the flight, the behavior changes because the culture at Heathrow is different from the culture from the airport they took off from. Cultures are germane to particular nationalities. I have to admit that.
Yes.
You know, Hofstede did a study of high power distance, low power distance cultures where in some cultures we can't say boo to authority. In other cultures, we are very gung-ho with authority. In some cultures, we're very collective. In other cultures, we're very individualistic.
Yeah.
Yet again, all of these are driven by the value system within the organized community or country, and so on.
Yeah. So there's no right or wrong. It's what you identify with in terms of culture and how that drives you.
So some cultures may not help you, and therefore you would need to shift or pivot. I understand that in the 60s, a certain country, 2 or 3 countries actually, 3 countries, Asian countries, came to a certain African country, and they spied up the land, and they went away. And one of these countries is Singapore, another is Malaysia, and the other is South Korea.
Yep.
And at that time of visit, the South Korean economy was about a third of the economy of the country to which they visited. Okay.
The country in which we sit.
Yes, the country in which we sit. And so there was a culture of hard work, sacrifice, drive, excellence. And those drove those particular kind of a mix of Confucianism and other value systems to drive.
Yeah.
So when the outcomes are suboptimal, then you must say our thinking is not right, and therefore we need to change our mindset. And our mindset gobbles up the value system. Okay, so the mindset is molded by the value system, which we call culture. Yeah. And so whatever it is that we have dreamt
and cultures
of,
shift, don't they?
the cultures must, of necessity, shift. Must.
As the examples you just gave, I mean, I've spent a lot of time in those 3 countries and, exchanged conversations like this. And they came from somewhere, they went to somewhere, but they had to shift their mindset. And they went to the drawing board, but they also went and did, what you were talking about, learning, perception, what's out there, doing their pestle analysis, but not just within their own environments, but elsewhere, and seeing how they could. So I think it's great that you gave that example, and it brings all of these, facets together. Strategy is bigger than that word by itself.
Very true. And, because it is how you win the game, at every level, individual, family, community, country, continent, global, we ought to have a clearly defined strategy of where we want to go and what we want to do.
So, clearly there's a lot of thinking that goes into strategy. In fact, people don't talk about strategy without, the concept of thought and everything that has to go into it. But once you've defined what you consider to be a solid strategy, it's just the beginning.
It is, yes.
What are some of the outcomes? You've talked a little bit about tactics being different. They're what you use to implement the strategy.
Yeah.
But, once you start, what are some of the outcomes? Are there moments where you have to pivot? How do you do it? What is the approach? Shed some light on that.
In terms of crafting the strategy, one of the things that you'd want to do is create scenarios. We spoke about transactional scenarios in terms of the value, the cash bit. But you also need to create conceptual scenarios, which is, where is the disruption coming from? And you almost need to have either a red team or devil's advocate in the room to challenge. So you ought to have positive tension in the room. That's really important. Beyond that, where's the disruption coming from? Then you look at your pestle analysis, which is your contextual strategy, or your non-market strategy. Really important. And you begin to tease out and create almost a framework that says, if inflation goes up by X, we will do Y. If a certain organization comes in with a technology that renders what we're doing, we will do X. All of that needs to be in place. That's really important. And beyond that, then you start to ask, what are the potential barriers beyond the scenarios? What are the potential barriers that are going to stop us from implementing? Is it going to be resource, human capacity, etc.? Is it going to be cash? Is it going to be equipment? Is it going to be the environment? What are those things? And start to make plans for those. Beyond all of that, you need to ask, what knowledge do we need in order to implement? What insights do we need in order to implement? What tools do we need in order to implement? What exposure, experience do we need, expertise do we need in order to implement? And then lastly, what sort of skills do we need in order to implement? And then you ask the critical question, who? I always ask who before what? Okay, so who is it who has done what we want to do, and then how did they do it? So you can even create a XY matrix of the who and the how, or the who and the what. And you don't move from your XY matrix until you've gotten your who and you've gotten your how. All of this suggests that at a corporate level, one ought to give significant thought to crafting the strategy. what I hear people say is, oh, strategy formulation is easy, the implementation is hard. I say no, because you did not anticipate and therefore bring in the pivoting that you're going to do if the environment changes. That is why the implementation becomes difficult. So if you spend more time formulating, including potentially what can go wrong,
having the scenarios there,
then it almost becomes like a checklist, a tick box, because we anticipated this, and so we're doing that. I can't remember who it was. Might have been ICI or one of those big farmers who had anticipated COVID. And so, bang, they were in there, almost immediately, bang, 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 and were able to give us a vaccine in no time at all.
And for them, business.
Oh, my goodness, and for them, incredible business. So we, as leaders who are informing, inspiring, and influencing, we ought to take significant time and effort in formulating the strategy, so that what comes after, even if it's not a piece of cake, becomes much easier, and therefore
manage
and you can go against the narrative that the implementation is hard. No, you just sat and you didn't anticipate, and therefore, so the who and the how, the what and the why, the when and the where. You just create a 2x2 matrix or XY matrix, and you don't move until you have gotten your who.
So let's imagine the scenario where we literally have 3 scenarios.
Yeah.
We've started implementing and we've realized that, scenario 1 has kicked in and we need to pivot, we need to make a change. We do that, but then we hit another roadblock. So we've gone through different scenarios, but we're still not getting there. At what point do we decide, or do we say, yes, maybe this was not the right strategy at all, and we just need to stop, completely go back to the drawing board? Is it a feeling? Is it a moment? Is it a business figure? What would go into kind of making a big decision to say, no, we were just wrong, it was the wrong strategy, and we just need to call it what it was.
So go back to the thinking. I always say, if you get suboptimal outcomes, then your thinking is wrong. Full stop. So what information did we take in to arrive at our thinking? And therefore, the filter normally...
Well, there's some gaps in the information in the first place.
Yeah, the gaps
ask all these questions.
Yes. Yeah. So normally, if you take the New World Order, for example, where we are now, you ask yourself, what is legal? That is one frame. Then you ask yourself, what is equitable? That is another frame. Then you ask yourself, historically, what have we done? Philosophically, what have we done? Psychologically, what have we done? Morally, what have we done? By the time you look through those filters, so bring it to business, and you ask yourself, so what is the existing narrative? Then you ask yourself, why? What is the solve that the present narrative gives? And if you identify the solve, i.e., if you take, I'm looking for a taxi, right? First of all, I'm in New York. I'm not sure which taxi to take. I'm not sure how much it's going to cost me. So making a choice, that's one solution. Negotiating my price, that is another solution. And then getting me there to the destination, because this one is the nearest to me and will get me there, that is also another solution. So that's Uber. So when we go to the drawing board, sincerely, I would say that on an 80-20 principle, we ought to be spending about 80% on the thinking and 20% on the execution. And two places, I told you the thou shalt not, 80, and then you got to 20. Yeah. And then you have Albert Einstein saying, if I have 1 hour to solve a problem, I'll use 55 minutes to think about the problem and 5 minutes to solve it. So we should be really critical about not rushing in. Nevertheless, out of nowhere, you have a COVID, okay? You factored all of the things, but you never factored a COVID. You really need to go back to the drawing board and ask yourself, how do we...
Because the environment has completely changed.
The environment has completely changed. Yeah. How do we solve for this? And, during the COVID, I consulted for a hospital group, and they ended up being the first private hospital to have a PCR machine in the country, okay? And so we went through all of that. How do we solve for this? And it meant that that hospital group had to go through the customer flow, patient flow, change the nature of the hospital. It became more of a COVID-type hospital rather than your normal hospital, in order for all of that to take place. And please, it doesn't matter how well you structure, you also have to add in, sometimes there's a bit of serendipity, a bit of luck that comes your way. Because this particular hospital had just set up a brand new ICU.
Right.
I mean, literally. And that ICU,
it's kind of world-class.
World-class ICU. And then suddenly COVID hits. And so it's just marvelous coincidence, as it were.
So we shouldn't rubbish a bit of good luck as well.
No, it's 90% preparation, and then you get a headwind of a bit of luck as well. Yeah.
And you mentioned people. You said the who and the how, or the who and the what.
Yeah.
And so here is a scenario where we've got a solid strategy, what we believe, and we stand by this strategy. But when it comes to the results, as due to the implementation, we've seen that something didn't quite go well. Yeah. So can people mess up a good strategy?
Your people are your critical success factor in 99.999%.
So the strategy can be good, but implementation can be poor
because of the people. All right. So, normally, if you have a people problem, it's either a knowledge problem, an insight problem, a tool problem, expertise, experience problem, skill problem, or attitude problem.
Which is too often the case, unfortunately.
Yes.
Because with skills, you can learn, you can grow. But if you have the willingness to learn, you will be helped and you will learn if you don't have the willingness.
So aptitude, attitude, I always take aptitude, but it's not a zero-sum game. So if I'm given a choice, I'll have both. But then, you see, the attitude also comes down to the value system of the individual. And that's why it's critical, right from the onset, to set the value system. So, when I was younger, I did McDonald's, I worked in McDonald's. And you get there, there's a value system, there's a structure, there's a system, and you just follow like an automaton. You flip those burgers and you put them in the bags.
No changes. It's clear.
It's clear.
Everywhere in the world where McDonald's sits, right?
Exactly. Yeah. They have created a culture and a system. And I have to also say that different industries have or will give you different cultures and systems. So if it's a service-oriented industry where you're offering service, customer service, empathy, etc., really important. If it is professional services, for example, legal or accountancy or consultancy, expertise and being world-class is critical. If it is, stack them up high and sell them low because you're selling cheap as chips, then your clients or customers are not fussed by the environment so much as the value they are obtaining. And if you're offering a niche, highly niche service, then again, whether it's high-end, you're selling Rolexes or Porsches or etc., there's a certain je ne sais quoi that you bring to the environment and to the team to sell. If it's technology, likewise. So industry will also direct the sort of system and structure that you need for it to go. But ultimately, your people. And the reason people is a critical success factor, there are 8.4 billion people on the planet. Everyone's different. Everyone's different. And so your people can be your sustainable competitive advantage, because you can't have two Tuccis. All right?
Yep.
You can't have two.
Can't have two Theos.
And so if you have a Theo on your team or a Tucci on your team, that gives you your sustainable competitive advantage. I mean, there's a young lady who worked in telecoms. I'm not going to mention her name. She worked from one telco company and then moved to another telco company and eventually became the CEO of the third telco. Why? Because every time she walked with the sustainable competitive advantage of that organization. And she was able to fuse, and you had the confluence of knowledge, insight, tool skills, expertise to bring to the last telco she worked for. So your people are critical, and therefore skilling them and upskilling them, critical. We don't tend to spend sufficient time. And that brings me to a pet subject of mine, which is Leadership 4.0.
Okay.
And just to give you a glimpse, and it's to say that we've had the baby boomers, we've had Gen X, Gen Y, Gen Z, we have alphas, we have millennials, and each one comes with a particular temperament, all right? So you as the leader, leading different generations, need to understand what drives your people and then dole it out. And in this dispensation, it is 2 of emotion, 1 of rationality. I started off by saying, inspire. Let's give a wonderful vision of picture of the future. Influence, that is values driven. And then inform, that's rationality. So in this dispensation, to make it really well, there should be emotional intelligence, which you bring to your people. So top-down dictatorial, you must do, for the most part, only works in hospitals, in the military.
Where clear processes, structure, instructions are needed. But otherwise,
Otherwise, touchy-feely, really important. Your people are critical to your success.
Wonderful. So, like I said, I really wanted us to delve into strategy today. And, you mentioned that governance is one of the other areas that you focus on. And I know there's certainly a link between governance and strategy. And can you shed a bit of light on that?
Yeah. So governance is doing the right things and doing things right, simply put. And quite often that resides at the board level, and then it's distilled, and when it comes down to the implementation level or the executive level, it becomes more compliant.
Right.
Okay. But I would say that in seeking to make sure that you are on the right journey of governance, strategy is only one part of what you need to look at. And here we're talking corporate governance. So I would say beyond strategy, you need to be looking at sustainability. And here we're talking financial sustainability. It used to be 3 Ps, people, planet, and profit. But now we have ESG. How do we address
environmental, social governance? Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right. Who are the shareholders, and what are the demands of you? That's important. If you're a business, if you're a company in our neck of the woods, your objective is to hold the best interest, to act in the best interest of the organization, the business, and not necessarily the shareholders. But you must take shareholder interest to heart and have a system where you are able to address shareholders and engage shareholders. Stakeholder engagement, internally, externally. And I define stakeholders as those who can cause you pain and those who are interested in what you do. All right. And then you have those who lie on the periphery. So your staff, et cetera, your critical stakeholders. But your regulator is a critical stakeholder. Your bank, critical stakeholder. Your consumers, critical stakeholders. And you should not leave them out. And you should be very intentional about. And where you have high-level stakeholders, for example, I normally say you craft a stakeholder engagement calendar where those who can cause you pain and are interested in what you do, and typically, right across the world, tends to be the tax authorities.
Yes.
So you should be engaging them regularly, at least 2 or 3 times a year. Really important.
That's the thing. So with the governance, I mean, with all these stakeholders you've talked about, especially what we're calling the high impact stakeholders, they have governance expectations on you as a business.
Yes, they do.
And so you need to incorporate those elements into your strategy.
Absolutely.
Otherwise, you're destined to fail.
Absolutely. I mean, you're going to fall at the first hurdle. So, and if you're a regulated entity, all the more so.
Yeah.
You know, if you're manufacturing, if you're hospital, if you're teaching, all of these require regulations, and you need to comply with those. And so you need to bring them in. We've talked about scenarios, so I'm not going to talk about that much. Scope, technology. How do we address technology? And that immediately takes us to security. How do we address the issue of security? I'm talking cybersecurity, enterprise risk, business continuity plan. All of those things need to be fleshed out and very, very clear. Beyond that, you look at your statutory obligations, you look at your staff, you look at the skill set. So, for example, if we're traveling in a particular direction in terms of the vision, what skills do we need today? What skills do we need tomorrow? So these are some of the aspects that I bring together in terms of corporate governance at the board level. And these are fleshed out, agreed upon, and then the chief executive officer, the CEO, together with his
executive team or management
team will take this, have a scorecard again, and or a dashboard. And so on a regular basis, maybe once a month, there'll be an integrated performance report, and then every quarter there's a board meeting to hold accountability. The board typically is the custodian of the strategy and also ensuring implementation of governance. There's another one on the top, which would be ownership, which is either the shareholders or the critical stakeholders who sit at the top of the tree. So typically you have the shareholders at the top who have ownership. In the middle, you have control by the board, where the stewardship of strategy and stewardship of governance. And the board secretary is the orchestrator of proper governance at the board level. And then there's delegation of authority to the CEO and the C-suite who implement.
All these are reasons why strategy becomes so important. It's looked after or it's managed at the highest levels
Yes.
when it comes to organizations, corporate bodies.
Yes.
And I think, as we talk about it and use the word in day-to-day, language, because today people are promoting personal brands or building businesses, small entrepreneurs, and they're trying to see what strategy really is and where it fits. And it's to understand that it is one of the most critical functions for your business.
Yes, indeed.
Because that's the that's the starting point.
Yeah.
So I think you've really helped to distill some of those processes for us today. And I want to go.
Let me just add that.
Sure.
The word strategy really comes out of a war term, a war commander commanding the field to win the war. But we use that analogously in terms of our lives to say, if life is a game, if life is a journey, if business is a game which we play to win, then how do we play it to win? Yeah, go.
Beautiful. So let's come back to where we kind of started from and understand what are your values and your culture.
I am obsessed with growing my mind. And so, number one is to have my life as my greatest project, to have my mind as my greatest asset. And in doing that, I am evolving to give the fullest expression of who I am to the world. And that is critical and that's important because there's only one me. And so if I optimize, self-optimize, or if I optimize my capabilities, I will maximize my utility to the world. And so you get to have the benefit of Theodore optimized. So I am obsessed with growing my mind so that I can give back to the world. So,
I love that. I love that, and I can really relate, but you've also captured it so beautifully. Can you share a few last words for those who are listening and how they can, optimize their lives or optimize their strategies?
Grow your mind. You see, your thinking is food for your soul. Whatever you consume, information-wise, becomes fuel for your thinking. And so if your thinking is suboptimal, you can never get optimized outcomes. Suboptimal thinking can never give birth to optimized outcomes. Therefore, you must optimize your thinking. And by optimizing your thinking, I'm talking about consuming quality information. You must watch what you consume and watch what you don't consume. Just as we do with water and food, we must do the same with our minds. And for me, I would say the love of wisdom, philosophy, added to history, added to literature, added to psychology, and added to theology, gives you a nice framework, lens, worldview for contesting the world. And I added the theology because I acknowledge my finitude. I am a finite being. Somebody said, I am a fragment in infinity, sharing moments in eternity. I acknowledge my finitude and the fact that I am finite, and therefore I go out to seek the infinite so that he, it, they, she can share with me, to be a source, to be able to give back for this brief journey.